My name is Alex Miller, and I always believed I could sense trouble before it truly arrived. But nothing quite prepared me for the day I accompanied my wife Lisa to her boss's house for a small celebration, or so she called it. From the very start, something gnawed at me, a tension beneath my skin, a subtle current of anxiety that built with each step I took up the stone walkway to Clyde Hamilton's impressive home. The air outside was heavy with the promise of summer rain, the sky low and gray, and I remember thinking how even the weather seemed to be holding its breath. Lisa was unusually quiet during the drive over, her fingers tapping out some nervous pattern on her phone. Every few moments, she'd glance at her reflection in the side mirror, reapplying her lipstick with almost obsessive care. I made a joke about her treating this dinner like a red carpet event, but she barely managed a forced smile. "It's just a big project, Alex. Clyde invited us all," she said, tucking a stray lock of hair behind her ear. "He likes these things to feel special." The way she said his name, soft, almost affectionate, stuck in my mind. When we arrived, the house glowed from within, golden light spilling onto the porch. The door was answered by Clyde himself, dressed just a notch too casually for the occasion, dark jeans, a crisp shirt, sleeves rolled up. He greeted Lisa first, ignoring me for a moment, and I watched as his hand hovered just a bit too long on her shoulder when he leaned in for a quick, familiar hug. I tried to shrug it off as office culture, that easy informality people in creative fields seem to wear like a badge, but already I could feel the edges of doubt forming in my mind. Inside, the living room buzzed with soft jazz, low laughter, and the clink of wine glasses. But what caught my attention, what I couldn't shake, was the way everyone seemed to orient themselves around Lisa and Clyde. Even the people chatting across the room would pause to glance their way. Lisa, always more reserved in crowds, suddenly seemed electric, laughing at Clyde's jokes, her posture open, her eyes shining in a way I hadn't seen in months. I realized I was clutching my glass too tightly, knuckles white, feeling like an outsider in a space that was supposed to be welcoming. The evening unfolded in a blur of polite conversation and carefully curated small talk. I drifted between groups, picking at the charcuterie board, making the rounds as a dutiful spouse, but always, out of the corner of my eye, I watched Lisa and Clyde. At one point, I found myself standing by the fireplace listening to a story about office politics from one of Lisa's colleagues, but my focus kept drifting. I noticed how Clyde would touch Lisa's arm when he spoke, the way her laughter grew louder around him, how their private asides seemed to pull them into their own little world. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe this is just how people act when they're proud of a successful project. Maybe I'm being paranoid. But then, as the evening wore on, my patience wore thin. Lisa excused herself to help in the kitchen, and Clyde followed a few minutes later. I lingered in the hallway, half out of curiosity, half out of unease, and overheard snippets of their conversation, her voice lower, more in asterisk mate, laughter soft and private. When they returned, Lisa's cheeks were flushed, and she barely met my eyes. I tried to pull her aside to ask if everything was all right, but she brushed me off, whispering, "Don't make a scene." I stood awkwardly near the French doors, feeling out of place, wondering when this party would end. That's when it happened, the moment that shattered whatever fragile trust one was trying to hold onto. As people began gathering for a group photo, Clyde slipped his hand onto Lisa's back, his thumb tracing a slow, deliberate line just above her waist. The gesture was in asterisk mate, possessive, and for a moment, Lisa didn't move away. But then she noticed my stare, and everything changed. She jerked forward, twisting away from Clyde, and for a split second, I saw something in her face, fear, maybe, or guilt. But she recovered quickly, stepping back toward me, and then, to my shock, she turned her anger on me. "Alex, could you at least try to relax?" she said loudly enough for others to hear, rolling her eyes. "You're being ridiculous. There's nothing going on here. Honestly, you always do this. Can't you just let me enjoy a night with my colleagues?" Her voice carried a brittle edge, a note of accusation that made my skin prickle. The room quieted, a few people glancing over before returning awkwardly to their conversations. I tried to laugh it off, to play the part of the supportive husband, but inside I was burning with embarrassment and confusion. Lisa leaned in close, lowering her voice just for me. "If you can't handle yourself in public, maybe you should go wait in the car." Her words stung. I wanted to defend myself, to say that I'd seen what I'd seen, but she gave me that look, the one that said, "If you push this, you'll be the bad guy." So I swallowed my pride and nodded, standing at the edge of the party, feeling more alone than ever. The rest of the evening blurred together in a haze of forced smiles and cold, distant glances. Lisa avoided me, chatting animatedly with her coworkers, and Clyde never looked my way again. I found myself counting the minutes, longing for the sanctuary of my car, the familiar solitude of home. When the party finally wound down, Lisa was all business, her tone clipped as we said our goodbyes. In the car, she stared out the window in silence, arms folded across her chest. I wanted to ask her, demand even, what was really going on, but the words caught in my throat. Instead, I drove us home through the quiet city streets, the tension thick between us, headlights flickering across rain-soaked pavement. I replayed the night over and over in my mind, second-guessing every glance, every laugh, every touch. Was I imagining things? Was I just insecure, jealous, reading too much into the ordinary rhythms of office life? Or was something truly wrong, something Lisa wasn't willing to admit? Each doubt twisted tighter in my gut, and I knew, as we pulled into our driveway in silence, that this night would be the beginning of a painful unraveling, one I couldn't ignore any longer. For the first time in years, I lay awake long after Lisa fell asleep, staring at the ceiling, wondering when the sense of safety in my marriage had slipped away. The house felt colder, the silence heavier, and my mind circled the same question over and over. Had I just witnessed the first real crack in the life we built together? And if so, what would come next? The morning after Clyde's party, sunlight crept through the blinds, slicing the bedroom into neat lines of shadow and light. Lisa was already up, moving quietly through her routines, shower, makeup, phone in hand, her features a practiced mask of calm. I lay in bed pretending to scroll my phone, but really I was watching her, studying the small shifts in her body language that seemed so new, so guarded. We barely spoke over breakfast. She poured herself coffee, answered a couple of work messages, and left the house in a rush, claiming she needed to be early for a meeting with Clyde and the marketing team. The door closed behind her with a sharp, decisive click. Only then did I let myself breathe out, the tension in my chest pressing like a weight I couldn't name. I told myself not to jump to conclusions, but my mind kept replaying the night before, the way Clyde's hand lingered, Lisa's accusations, the way she shut me out. The urge to check her phone washed over me, strong and irrational. I resisted. I wanted to believe I was better than that my trust was stronger. Still, the seed of doubt had been planted, and all day it spread its roots through my thoughts. As the days unfolded, my attention sharpened on every detail of Lisa's behavior, seeing patterns where before I saw only coincidence. She started staying late at the office, claiming urgent deadlines or unexpected last-minute meetings. At first, she'd text updates, running late, don't wait up, but soon even those messages stopped. She began leaving her phone face down on the table or slipping away to another room when it rang. When I'd enter, she'd end her call abruptly or talk in short, clipped tones. Once, I caught her deleting messages as I came into the kitchen, her finger tapping the screen a little too quickly. When I asked who she'd been talking to, she gave a casual answer, just work stuff, Alex, nothing interesting, and changed the subject before I could press. It wasn't just her phone. Lisa's appearance changed too. She started buying new clothes, sharper, bolder styles she never used to wear. She'd come home with shopping bags from stores she'd never shown interest in before, dresses still crisp with tags, makeup, and perfume I didn't recognize. She spent more time getting ready in the mornings, and on weekends she'd mention plans with colleagues, coffee dates, museum visits, late brunches. When I asked if I could join, she'd brush me off with a quick excuse, it's all work talk, you'd be bored. Even her laughter changed, lighter, somehow more distant, echoing from another room while I sat alone with my coffee, wondering when my wife became a stranger. Family gatherings became another battleground. Lisa started declining invitations more often, always citing work stress or exhaustion, leaving me to show up alone with a ready excuse for her absence. Our parents would ask how she was doing, why she was working so much, and I'd force a smile, say she was busy with a big project. Even when she did join, Lisa seemed restless, checking her phone under the table, responding with distracted nods, never really present. My mother noticed, giving me a look of quiet concern. I brushed her off, not ready to admit even to myself that something was wrong. The mosaic of suspicious actions grew with every passing week. Once, when Lisa said she was too tired to join our friends for dinner, I came home to find her car gone. She claimed she went for a late-night drive to clear her head, but the lie clung awkwardly to her words, her eyes not quite meeting mine. On another occasion, I overheard her in the hallway whispering into the phone, "No, it's fine, he never asks questions, he's not paying attention." The words stung, and before I could react, she had ended the call and walked back in, all smiles, pretending nothing happened. There were little things too, stray receipts for dinners at places we never visited, a hotel key card she claimed was a mistake from a conference, her perfume lingering on her clothes even when she said she'd only been at the office. I started to feel like a detective in my own home, collecting fragments, looking for patterns, obsessing over every odd moment. Each night, I'd lie awake replaying conversations, searching for signs I'd missed, my imagination feeding on shadows. One Saturday morning, Lisa announced she'd be gone all day, team building, she said. Clyde's organizing something for the department. I offered to drive her, but she declined, insisting it was out of town and she'd be back late. She left early, dressed up, a hint of nervous energy in her step. By evening, she still hadn't returned. I called, got voicemail, texted, no response. When she finally came home, she was distant, quick to shower and change, offering only vague answers to my questions. It was fine, just the usual games and drinks. She wouldn't look at me. I tried to confront her, my words coming out tangled. Lisa, is there something you want to tell me? Are you seeing someone else? She rolled her eyes, the same sharp edge from Clyde's party returning. Alex, you're being ridiculous. I'm just tired. I work hard and I don't need this right now. She left the room and I was left standing there, feeling as if the foundation of our marriage was quietly crumbling beneath my feet. My world became a cycle of suspicion and denial. I wanted to trust her, I wanted to believe this was just stress, just the grind of modern life. But every instinct in me screamed otherwise. The person I shared a life with was slipping away and all I could do was watch, powerless to stop it. In moments of doubt, I'd question myself, maybe I was the problem. Maybe I'd grown distant, too focused on work or too set in my routines. But deep down I knew. There was a wall between us now, built brick by brick from secrets, lies, and the cold distance that only grows when truth is buried. The night that changed everything was still ahead of me, but by then the signs were all there. I was just waiting for the final, undeniable proof, the moment when suspicion would harden into certainty and I'd have to face the reality I'd tried so hard to avoid. The evening the truth revealed itself, the city was wrapped in a hushed, rain-soaked quiet. I left work earlier than usual. I hadn't told Lisa I'd be home ahead of schedule. Some part of me wanted to catch a glimpse of our life when she thought I wasn't looking. I parked the car down the block, letting the drizzle drum on the windshield while I steeled myself. My nerves felt raw, my stomach churning with a cocktail of hope and dread. I told myself I was being paranoid, but the mosaic of lies and odd behavior made the silence in our house feel menacing. When I entered, the lights were low in the hallway. Lisa's shoes were by the door, her purse tossed carelessly on the armchair. She was home. I called out her name, half hoping she'd greet me with her usual smile, but only the muffled sound of water running greeted me. I set down my bag and walked quietly down the hallway. The sound was coming from the bathroom at the end, her favorite spot for long, steamy showers after tough days at the office. But this time there was another sound, faint but distinct, a voice, not just hers, but a man's, filtering through the bathroom door. My heart pounded in my chest as I moved closer, careful not to make the floorboards creak. The door was closed, but not fully, a sliver of light cut across the floor. I could hear laughter, Lisa's laughter, warm and free, the sound of a woman unburdened. Then I recognized Clyde's voice, soft and in asterisk mate through the speakerphone, his tone tinged with the kind of familiarity you only hear between lovers. I had a great time last night, Clyde was saying. You looked incredible as always. Lisa's voice floated back, full of that same bright energy she used to have for me. You make me feel seen, Clyde. He never notices anything, he's clueless. The words made me flinch. I was frozen in place, feeling as though the ground had dropped out beneath me. Every memory of the last few months replayed in my mind with sharp clarity, her changed laughter, the excuses, the late nights and unexplained absences. I realized in that terrible moment that I wasn't paranoid. I was right. I didn't know what to do. For a second all I could do was stand there, trying to breathe quietly. My hands were trembling. I wanted to burst in and demand an explanation, to scream, to cry, to collapse under the weight of this betrayal. But instead, I took a shaky breath, forced myself to stay calm, and gently pushed the bathroom door open a little farther. Lisa didn't notice me at first. She was standing at the sink in her bathrobe, hair wet, phone on speaker in front of her. Her face was flushed, her smile soft and private. Clyde's voice on the other end was fading, as if they were winding down some secret ritual. I stepped into the light and watched as she caught my reflection in the mirror. The color drained from her face in an instant. She fumbled to grab the phone, turning off the call with shaking hands. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence between us was thick, charged with 1,000 unsaid words. Lisa pulled the bathrobe tighter around her and gave a tight, brittle smile. "Oh, you're home early," she managed, her voice trembling just enough to betray her. I stared at her, searching for any trace of the woman I thought I knew. "Who were you talking to, Lisa?" My voice was low, steadier than I felt. She hesitated for a split second, then forced a light laugh. "Work call." Clyde needed some last-minute notes on the presentation. You know how he is, can't do anything without checking with me. It was such a feeble lie that it made my anger boil over. I shook my head, unable to trust anything she said anymore. Don't insult me, Lisa. I heard everything. Her eyes widened, and for a brief moment I saw something like panic flicker in them. She looked away, rubbing her arm as if trying to scrub away the truth. You're just making things up, Alex. You always twist things in your head. Can't a woman talk to her boss without her husband thinking the worst? But I wasn't going to let her wriggle free. You called me clueless. You told him I don't notice anything. How long has this been going on? The words hung between us, heavy and final. Lisa's lips parted as if to speak, but no words came out. I could see the struggle in her eyes, caught between denial and admission, between the instinct to protect herself and the reality she could no longer hide. Finally, she just shrugged, a tiny, broken gesture. You wouldn't understand. In that instant, I felt something break inside me. The hope that things could go back to normal, the faith that my wife was still the person I'd married, it all evaporated. I turned and left the bathroom, barely hearing her call my name. The rest of the night passed in a blur. I sat in the living room, lights off, listening to the rain hammer against the windows. Lisa didn't come out and I didn't go to her. I thought about all the moments I'd ignored, all the lies I'd accepted out of love, all the ways I doubted myself when my instincts were screaming the truth. The world outside felt distant, and the house that once felt like home was now full of ghosts. In those lonely hours, the truth solidified in my mind. There was no room left for excuses. Lisa's infidelity was no longer a suspicion or a nightmare I could wake from, it was a fact. And with that knowledge, a new, colder resolve began to take shape in my heart. I knew I had to protect myself now. Whatever happened next, it was time to stop living in denial. As the first light of dawn crept into the room, I made a decision. I would no longer look the other way. I would no longer accept the lie. Lisa's betrayal had changed everything, and there was no turning back. The days that followed were a blur, a long, slow-motion unraveling of everything I thought I knew about my marriage. Lisa didn't apologize or even seem to regret what had happened. In the morning after the confrontation, she acted as though nothing extraordinary had taken place. She emerged from the bathroom with her hair perfectly styled, slipping on a crisp blouse and smart skirt, her face a careful mask of calm. The only sign of unease was the way she avoided meeting my eyes, busying herself with making coffee and glancing repeatedly at her phone as if waiting for a message that never came. I sat at the kitchen table, my appetite gone, simply watching her move around the kitchen. I thought about asking again for the truth, about demanding an honest conversation, but something in her stiff posture told me it would only end in another lie. Instead, I watched the clock tick away the minutes, the silence between us thick and suffocating. When she finally left for work, the sound of the front door closing felt like the last page of a book slamming shut. That day at work, I accomplished almost nothing. My mind kept wandering back to the bathroom, the look on Lisa's face, the panic, the guilt, the way she immediately tried to cover it all with that flimsy excuse. I replayed her words over and over. I wondered how long she had been thinking I was clueless, how many times she had laughed about me with Clyde. I felt a mixture of humiliation and anger that was difficult to separate. That evening, Lisa came home later than usual. I had decided, almost out of habit, to make dinner for us both, roast chicken, a salad, the kind of meal we'd use to enjoy together. But as I set the plates on the table, Lisa breezed in, still on the phone, still in work mode. She barely glanced at me, placing her bag on the floor and slipping off her shoes, her phone pressed to her ear. I tried to catch her attention, but she held up a finger, signaling for me to wait. I felt like a stranger in my own home. When she finally hung up, I spoke. Lisa, we need to talk. My voice was calm, but inside I was a storm of emotions. She rolled her eyes, pouring herself a glass of wine before answering. Can we not do this right now, Alex? I've had a long day. She sat down, forked some salad onto her plate, and ate in silence. But I wasn't going to let it go. I needed to hear her say it. How long have you been seeing Clyde? Why can't you just be honest with me? She set her fork down and sighed, exasperated, as if my questions were an inconvenience. Honestly, Alex, you're acting like a child. I told you there's nothing going on. You're just being paranoid because you're unhappy with your own life. Her tone was icy. You're always so cold. You never listen to me anymore. You come home, you eat dinner, you sit on your phone, and you expect everything to be fine. Maybe if you paid more attention to me, I wouldn't have to look elsewhere for someone to talk to. I stared at her, stunned. In a few sentences, she had flipped the script entirely, making my pain seem like a character flaw. So it's my fault now? I asked, voice trembling. She shrugged as if it was obvious. I'm not saying it's all your fault. But you need to look at how you treat me, Alex. You've been distant for a long time. I've tried to tell you, but you never really listen. And now you want to play the victim. She laughed bitterly. It's always about you, isn't it? For a moment, I couldn't find words. I sat there, hands clenched, feeling my reality twist and warp. Was she right? Had I been so focused on work, on my own routines, that I'd stopped seeing her? But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't make the facts fit her version of events. I had always been present. I had tried to support her, to listen, to share my life with her. But now any attempt at understanding was being nized against me. Lisa pushed back from the table, her voice rising, her anger sharp and cold. And if you ever try to tell anyone about this, your family, my friends, anyone at work, I'll tell them you've been emotionally abusive for years. Who do you think they'll believe? Me or the husband who never cares? I recoiled as if struck. Her threat hit me like a punch to the gut. Are you serious? I whispered, shocked at how far she would go to protect herself. She looked at me with the cold, unblinking confidence of someone who knew she held all the cards. Try me, Alex. I'm done letting you control the narrative. If you want to ruin both our reputations, go ahead. But I promise you, you'll lose. Her words echoed in the quiet room, a cold wind blowing through the last remains of trust between us. For a moment, I wondered if I had ever truly known the person sitting across from me. After that, Lisa withdrew even further. She stopped talking to me unless it was absolutely necessary, started locking her phone, and stayed out later and later at night. She began talking about space and self-care, insisting she needed more time with her friends and colleagues. It was as if she was laying the groundwork for her own defense, painting herself as the victim before anyone could question her story. At work, I noticed odd things. A few colleagues were suddenly cool with me, offering sympathetic smiles or avoiding eye contact. My mother called, saying Lisa had seemed upset when she'd run into her at the store, complaining that I was too controlling, too demanding. The realization hit me. Lisa was already spinning her side of the story, painting herself as a neglected wife and me as the villain. I was powerless to stop it. One night, unable to sleep, I wandered through the dark house, looking at photos of happier times, vacations, family dinners, small moments that now felt like they belonged to another life. I kept asking myself where I had gone wrong, what I could have done differently, whether it was all my fault after all. But the deeper I looked, the clearer it became. Lisa had made her choices, and now she was trying to rewrite history so she could live with them. Despite her threats, a part of me began to harden. I realized I could no longer trust Lisa. Not with my heart, my reputation, or even the truth. Her willingness to twist reality, to nize my kindness and love, left me with no doubt. Whatever love we'd shared was gone, replaced by a bitter battle for self-preservation. The worst part was the isolation. I had no one to talk to. If I told my side, I'd be accused of trying to destroy her. If I stayed silent, her story would become the only story anyone heard. I was trapped, balancing on the edge of a crumbling marriage, wondering which step would send me plummeting into a new, unknown chapter of my life. In those long, sleepless nights, I began to write things down. Dates, conversations, memories of moments that felt wrong. It was the only power I had left. The truth, documented in ink, safe from Lisa's shifting narratives. I didn't know yet what I would do with this evidence, but I knew I had to protect myself now. I wasn't the villain in this story, and I wouldn't let her make me one. It was the beginning of the end, but also, strangely, the beginning of something else. The slow, painful rebuilding of my own sense of self, separate from Lisa's manipulations. For the first time in a long time, I allowed myself to believe I might be able to reclaim my life, one hard, honest step at a time. The day after our confrontation, the house was unbearably silent. Lisa had left early, and I moved through the morning as if in a fog, my mind replaying every moment of the last few days, every word she'd thrown at me in self-defense, every threat. I felt as though I was drifting through someone else's life. But by midday, I realized that while my world had ground to a halt, Lisa's was moving on, and she was determined to take control of the narrative, no matter the cost. It started with a photo on social media. It was innocuous at first glance. Lisa standing beside Clyde and a cluster of colleagues, all beaming as they held up glasses of champagne in the office conference room. I was in the background, half turned away, a shadow at the edge of the frame, my expression neutral, my presence barely registered. The caption read, "Celebrating a hard-fought victory with the best team I could ask for. Grateful for those who lift me up when things get tough." both at work and beyond. Within minutes, the comments began to flow. Colleagues cheered the successful project, offering virtual claps and emojis. A few friends commented on how happy Lisa looked, sending her digital hearts. But then, the tone subtly shifted. Lisa responded to one friend's question about her weekend with a cryptic message. "Honestly, I've had some challenges lately, but I'm grateful for my support system. Sometimes, the people at home just don't get it." Another reply was even more pointed. "We all go through tough times. Just wish some people knew how to be there." I stared at my phone in disbelief as her friends began to send her words of encouragement, telling her to stay strong, remember your worth, and never settle for less than you deserve. Some even messaged me privately, their tone heavy with awkward concern, asking if Lisa and I were okay, if there was something they could do. One friend, whom I hadn't seen in months, wrote simply, "If you ever need to talk, I'm here." Sometimes partners forget what matters. I wanted to defend myself, to scream that they were only hearing one side, but I knew it would sound petty. The story was already out there, and I was the villain in it. Lisa's narrative grew with each day. At work, I heard whispers. Colleagues who used to greet me warmly now gave me cautious, sidelong glances. In the break room, conversations stopped when I entered, and I could sense the unspoken judgment. Even my manager pulled me aside one afternoon, concern furrowing her brow. "Alex, is everything all right at home? Lisa mentioned you've been distant lately. If you need time, just let me know." I nodded, swallowing my anger. Lisa's campaign was working. She was painting herself as the misunderstood, unappreciated wife, the heroine in a quiet domestic drama. At home, the walls closed in tighter. Lisa barely spoke to me except to give sharp instructions or ask practical questions about bills or groceries. She spent more time on her phone, sending rapid-fire messages, her face illuminated by the screen late into the night. I caught her several times rewriting the story of our marriage in private chats with friends, portraying me as cold, controlling, even emotionally distant. She crafted long, impassioned posts about resilience, finding strength in adversity, and learning to rise above negativity. The likes and comments poured in, her audience of supporters swelling with each new revelation. What hurt the most was how easily people believed her. My own friends started to pull away, unsure whom to believe, not wanting to get involved. My family, initially supportive, began to ask questions, soft, careful inquiries about whether I was really being present in my marriage or if maybe Lisa was right to feel lonely. The implication stung. Lisa had always been charming, quick to win people over, and now she wielded that SK*LL like a we*P*N. One evening, I discovered she had reached out to my sister, telling her she was worried about Alex's mental health and that I'd been acting strange. My sister called me, her voice thick with concern. "Alex, is everything all right? Lisa said you've been really withdrawn." I wanted to protest, to explain, but I heard the doubt in her voice. Lisa's strategy was working. She was isolating me, undermining my credibility before I could even defend myself. It became clear that Lisa was preparing for a public battle, one where perception mattered more than truth. She began documenting small arguments, saving *TS of text messages out of context, snapping photos of me alone in the kitchen or sitting quietly in the living room. Later, I would see these used as evidence of my distance, proof that I had checked out long before she ever needed support. She showed these to friends, crafting a narrative in which she was the victim of my neglect. At work events, Lisa became the life of the party, laughing loudly, clinging to Clyde's arm, posing for group photos that always seemed to show me on the margins. At a company dinner, I watched as she leaned in close to Clyde, her laughter ringing out, their chemistry unmistakable. People watched us, some with pity, others with barely concealed judgment. I felt like I was living in a fishbowl, every move scrutinized, every silence interpreted as coldness. Despite the humiliation, I refused to engage. I knew that any public outburst would be twisted into further evidence of my instability or aggression. I became painfully aware of every word I spoke, every gesture, terrified that even a sigh would be used against me. Lisa seemed to revel in this, her confidence growing as her narrative gained traction. The manipulation extended to our private lives. Lisa began talking about protecting herself, hinting that she was afraid of my temper, though I had never once raised my voice or hand to her. She spoke to friends in hushed tones about feeling unsafe, planting seeds of doubt everywhere she went. The betrayal was total, not just of our marriage, but of my character, my reputation, my place in our community. Yet even as Lisa's campaign gathered strength, I began to see its limits. A few close friends, those who had known me for years, reached out quietly, offering support without taking sides. One, a childhood friend, called late one night and said simply, "I don't know what's happening, but I know who you are." It was a small lifeline, but it mattered. I also noticed cracks in Lisa's performance. She grew more irritable, snapping at small inconveniences, losing patience with people who questioned her version of events. She spent hours crafting posts and messages, obsessing over how she was perceived, but at home, she was restless, unhappy, a shadow of the woman who once filled our house with laughter. Sometimes I wondered if she believed her own story or if she was simply too far in to turn back. The more she pushed, the more I resolved to protect myself, not through counterattacks or public scenes, but by quietly documenting everything. I kept a journal of events, saved every message, took note of every inconsistency. I spoke with a lawyer, explained the situation, and started to prepare for the next phase, whatever that would be. Through it all, I learned something important. Truth does not always win in the court of public opinion, but it still matters. Even as Lisa manipulated the narrative, even as friends and family doubted me, I held onto my version of reality, refusing to be gaslit into believing I was the villain in my own life. The stage was set for the inevitable end. Lisa had staked everything on being seen as the victim, but I knew that, in time, the truth would emerge. My job was to hold on until then, to keep my dignity, to protect what was left of myself, and to prepare for the day when her web of lies would begin to unravel. The hardest battles are the ones fought in silence, but I had learned how to endure, and I would not let Lisa's manipulations destroy who I was. With nowhere left to turn, I began to collect evidence. I documented Lisa's erratic absences, her changed behavior, and most crucially, her communications with Clyde. I consulted a lawyer, careful not to let Lisa catch wind of my preparations. In this isolating process, something unexpected happened. Jeremy, a former colleague of Lisa's, reached out. He'd witnessed the closeness between Lisa and Clyde and offered to share what he knew, promising he'd stand by his observations if needed. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel completely alone. Knowing someone else saw what I saw gave me the courage to move forward with protecting myself. The day finally came when I sat with my lawyer and presented everything: saved messages, timelines, and Jeremy's testimony. Lisa was forced to confront the consequences. Her affair with Clyde became public knowledge at work, and when an internal investigation began, Clyde was demoted. Lisa left her home, her control over the story slipping. In the quiet that followed, the house felt bigger, but also lighter. Step by step, I started to build a new life, one without Lisa's manipulations and with a promise to myself that I'd never accept less than honesty again. For the first time in a long time, I looked to the future with hope, no longer haunted by doubts or shadows.